Hey guys, it's great to see you. So this is the long awaited part 2 of the best VR settings for Assetto Corsa, and I'm going to go through 12 settings that will enable you to get better VR performance depending on your rig. As ever, do check out the rest of the channel. There's so much more sim racing on there, and if you've not subscribed yet, I'd love to have you on board. Before we go into this video, do remember that all of these settings are applicable to different systems. So the reason I've put 12 settings on there is that some of them may help you, some of them may not. It depends on the video card, processor and the rig you've got. Okay then, let's jump into number 1. The first place to go then, if you are going to use a post-processing filter, is to get the best PP filter for VR, and Natural Mod by Chris Kennedy is one of the best. Last updated in August 21. This is fantastic for VR. You do need Sol 2.1 or above. Check out on the channel, I've got lots of videos on how to do that. This is a really easy drag and drop into Content Manager. So once you've downloaded it, get it on your desktop like I've done here, drag it across and you'll see the 3 bars at the top. Clicking on those, click on install and you'll be able to choose that in the post-processing filter area, and I'll show you where that is now. So all you need to do is go over to Assetto Corsa, go to video, and then you've got all your video settings there, and you'll see on the right hand side here you've got enable post-processing filter. I've got that ticked, and we're going to pick natural mode Rift. Now that will give you the best VR settings for this PP filter, but remember you can also switch off the PP filter if you need to. Over to number 2. The next one we're going to look at is reflections. Reflections can absolutely kill your frame rates on VR. Now here you see rendering frequencies, I've got on 6 faces per frame. It's recommended to go down to 3 or preferably 2, and obviously you can check this out and see what it looks like on your PC. Also, I would put the resolution down a little bit, maybe to 512, and the rendering distance, I know on the last video I said keep it as high as possible. It all depends on your rig and what you've got inside there, so dropping that down to 1200 is not going to give you too much of an impact. Most Corsas aren't that big anyway. Next, we're going to stay in video settings and we're going to look at shadow resolution, smoke generation and smoke in mirrors. Now, I believe that smoke in mirrors, you don't really need it, so you can switch that off. Smoke generation, you can put that down to low. And shadow resolution, this can really kill your PC depending on, again, what you've got inside of it. So drop that down a little bit. That's number 3. Next up, we're going to talk about rendering mode and frame rate capacity. Now, I did show this in my last video and I did say put it on to 90, but after reading some forum posts, by putting this on Oculus Rift, clicking on the limit frame rate box there, and then also putting your frame rate maximum to just above 90, you can see you can slide that up and down. Just above 90, you can see some differences on some rigs, and again, all of these different tips I'm giving you will depend on what rig that you've got. So I'm going to drop that on 93 frames a second there. Next up at number 5 is AMD Super Sampling. Now, don't let the name put you off. You can use this on any video card. This is here now because of the amazing work that Ilya is doing on CSP. So make sure that you've got graphic adjustments active, and you see you've got AMD Fidelity FX Super Resolution there. Click on that as active. Now on the quality, it's best to put the quality down a little bit. So just put it on mid quality there, and you can also adjust the sharpness. Use both of these depending on your rig to try and get the best balance between quality and sharpness. Just a quick warning on AMD Fidelity FX, if you do put it on and you get some weird graphical effects, try unticking this origin shift here. If you untick that, it should fix it. And again, I'm going to say this all the way through this video, it does depend on your rig and setup. The next tip is an update to the way that the HUD works in VR, and this was much needed because if you were external to the car, sometimes you would get some weird things happening on screen. So going into Mode Tweaks VR, you can see here you've got Custom VR HUD Rendering. Now I haven't got it active at the moment, so if I put it active, that will actually improve the way the HUD works all around the car when using VR. You've also got a number of other settings in here that you can have a play around with, and all of this should really improve your experience with HUDs in VR. The next tip is to give you some more frames per second in VR if you are struggling, and again depending on your rig. So clicking Assetto Corsa and video, we've got rendering mode here on the Oculus Rift, so that's our VR headset, but also it's rendering on the screen as well. Now I've got that on 4K, so clearly that's going to have some kind of impact depending on the system that you've got. So you could put it down to full HD, which is the 1920 1080 there, but what you could also do if you wanted to, and trying to gain as much out of your PC as possible if it's a lower spec PC, is put it down all the way to 1024. So as long as you can still use your PC with that resolution and you can cram everything on the screen, it's an option for you, again depending on the spec of your PC. Next up, let's have another look at the post-processing filter. So right at the beginning we put natural mod Rift on there, which is really going to help the graphical quality, but you've also got this overall quality piece here. Now I've got it on maximum and I could put that on medium, and also if you've not seen this before, at the side of these different settings you've got these eyes. If you were to click on a setting and change it and then press the eye, it would do a quick calculation to tell you what that's going to do on your system. Now this is only a guide and you will find some different variation depending on what you're trying to do, but you can actually see how much that's going to affect your system. So overall quality I've put on medium, and you can also do that with glare quality too. Right, over to the next section. The next one is a biggie. So motion blur I always leave switched off. I like to not have that on, but motion blur you want off in VR. You also want heat shimmering, sun rays and FXAA all switched off there as well. I know on my last video I did say to leave sun rays on, and it all depends on your system. I've got a pretty good graphics card and sun rays do have some impact, but for me it was okay still to run in VR. But for this video I'm going to say switch it off, because if I was to put sun rays on there, even though I'm running a 3080, you'll see that there's some performance increase there. Actually, when your system, you might find that that's a real big impact. So do you need sun rays on? Probably not. And again, you can always switch it on if you feel like your frames per second are in the right place. The next section we're going to go to is mirrors. And again, I did speak about this in the first video. I'm going to say on mirror resolution, turn that right down as much as you want to there, and also take off the high quality. Again, you can push that up a little bit if you are getting the desired frames per second on VR. The next tip we're going to look at is something that's not too obvious, but it's actually a real biggie, and that is that if you're on race or track day or weekend or anything where you've got AI cars on Assetto Corsa, the one thing to point out is that AI cars take a ton of your CPU usage. So if I was to run this race here, I've got 23 opponents on and I'm trying to run that in VR, the CPU is going to be doing a lot more work with 23 opponents than if, for instance, I put it down to 10. So the number of AI opponents is really important, and if you are struggling for frames per second, try putting that down. It could be something as simple as that gives you that extra 10 or 20 frames per second. Next up, we're going to look at grass and particles. So grass effects, you can see here I've got on very high, so I run that in standard there with all the shadows on and all the rendering options I can. Take those off and just put it on medium. Is it going to make that much impact when you're flying around a track in VR? Probably not, and it could give you some valuable frames per second. The next one as well is particle effects. You should be able to keep all these on full, but it's definitely worth, if you look down at the bottom here, we've got all sorts of particles that could be making a big impact depending on your graphics cards and your CPU. So you've got solid pieces of dirt, bits of grass, you've got bits of tires lying around, you've got new flames, you've also got smoke and dust and sparks. So again, if you are looking for that extra few frames per second, you can either switch this off altogether or take some of those individual pieces off. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed that, and thank you for watching the video. Do remember, this is not supposed to be the definitive guide of how to get VR working as fast as possible. It's 12 tips that will help you get the best performance out of your rig. Do check out the other video that I've got on the channel on VR. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon.